Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on owlscoop.com. You already know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Scoop, owlscoop.com's podcast, Season 8, Episode 42. I'm John DeCarlo, owlscoop.com's editor, joined by Kyle Gauss, owlscoop.com's assistant editor, and Declan Landis with us. No one else. No Javon. No Caden. They both graduated yesterday. Congratulations to them. Ramir is out. He's food shopping, he said, right?
Yeah.
Very nutritious human being. He's our nutritional center. Johnny couldn't make it. So, yeah, it's just the three of us. What's going on, guys?
We're out here. I mean, you said Javon and Caden graduated yesterday as if that meant like, and we bid them adieu. Like, we'll never see them again.
No, we'll see them again.
Javon, like, they just could not make this recording.
Yeah. He just couldn't. Caden, we didn't hear from. Caden just blew us off.
Caden has made it pretty known, like, good seeing you guys. See you at the 10-year reunion.
Sent us a nice heartfelt message yesterday. That was good. I watched Temple's commencement with Declan up in the second level Leacourse Center. Declan was very spirited. Sam Cohn made the trip up with Ray Dunn. We all sat and shared our sentiments.
Yeah, it was a good time, other than the fact that, it was very long. It was my first like college graduation I ever went to. I don't want to say I was bored.
You were bored.
Yeah. I mean, I was bored.
It's for moms. It's just for like, let me hear my son's name as they cross the threshold, and I'm going to clap and hoot, and then we're going to do this 3,000 more times.
I thought that was good.
I mean, like, I was very proud the times that we were cheering. I was pumped. Like, it was good to see him graduate. I was very, very proud of Vaughn and Caden and my other friends. But, past that, I was like, good for you guys. But, I mean, let's keep it moving, and
right.
People were dancing and stuff. I'm like, all right, this is great. But, like, we don't need to see that, just, get your degree. Let's go.
What are you going to do when you walk across the stage?
I talked about that yesterday. I'm going to graduate in December of like 2024. So it's a smaller ceremony because not as many people graduate in December.
You're going to walk in May?
What's that?
Can't you walk in May? Don't they give you that option if you're a December grad?
Not really. They prefer that you walk in December.
Who gives a shit what they prefer about what they prefer?
I mean, look, I'm gonna try and push for it, but they're very stingy with like letting people graduate in the spring or walk in the spring if you graduate in December.
I mean the subsequent spring.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's
6
what
months
I mean.
there.
Yeah. So I might I was gonna say, flex and scream and like, let's go. But I mean, it's going to be like a smaller venue, so it's not the Leacourse Center.
It's all the reason why you should do
right.
it.
Yeah, that'll fill your voice. Your voice will fill the arena more if you let out like
I didn't want to scare somebody's grandma while I'm celebrating my achievements. You know what I mean? Like I was trying to be conscious.
You gotta be selfish in these moments. Who cares if Mima came here and she has a bad ticker? Like you gotta celebrate
not
you.
Paying for my degree. So,
exactly.
I mean, so we're on the fence.
There's very few moments in life. Very few moments in life to puff your chest out and say, like, I am Declan, I did this. So this is one of those moments.
We'll figure it out. I can do the worm. So I did think about that, but I think that's just too much.
John, I'm going to say this, and this is going to sound very mean, but do you have a filter on or something?
Do I have a filter on?
No, John, you look very tired today.
Me?
Yeah.
I am very tired.
Yes. I was like, you look like if they took like Declan's face and they were like, let's put the old man filter on it. Like it looks like it's just like you just look tired. It's the end of a long week.
Yeah. I am. When Kyle says this is going to sound mean, and you're like, where's he going with this?
I thought he was talking because the lamp was right next to my face.
No, we haven't even addressed.
Yeah.
You pretending to be E.T. hanging out amongst the stuffed animals.
You do. That's exactly what you look like.
You got to do what you got to do to get good audio,
Declan, have you seen E.T.?
The team. No.
Definitely. Well, there's a moment where Drew Barrymore tries to hide him because she doesn't want him to be stolen, so she puts him amongst her stuffed animals.
Oh.
And it's in the clip.
I might have to move because it's really hot in here.
You're going to tough it out.
speaking of ET, there's actually an Owl Scoop tie to that. We were on a road trip, and Kyle would just take my iPod and listen to it, and everything that was on it, he found he found among the many soft rock songs I have in my music collection, Neil Diamond, a song called Heartlight that was on the ET soundtrack, which I'm sure you haven't heard before. I wouldn't expect you to have heard it.
Yeah, he never saw the iconic movie, but he heard it.
Yeah,
he heard
yes,
the
but
soundtrack.
I love the soundtrack.
I was like, Kyle, you can skip past this. And he was like, shh.
No skips.
Legitimately fond of the song. I will say that to Kyle. Like, he will listen. He will give your musical library a shot. He's a lot less judgmental than I am. That's fair, right?
In general, I think I'm less judgmental than you.
Oh, no, in general? No. No, don't try to slip that. Anyway, famous number 42s, guys.
Jackie Robinson.
Yes.
That was mine.
Mo Vaughn.
Mariano Rivera.
Dave Henderson. And then that's probably about it.
We talked about Ronnie Lott last week, so I had that in the dome just in case.
See, I feel like with baseball, it's like you basically eliminated the last like 60. Well, I guess there's obviously outliers like Rivera, but for the most part, people coming up nowadays are not going to be like, let me wear 42 as my regular number. So just falling off.
It's true.
Not that I won't get nauseous talking about the Sixers, but doesn't Al Horford wear 42?
I hate that man. I hate that man more than like anyway. They're like the most unlikable basketball team of all time, and I don't know if I'm talking about the Sixers or the Celtics. Like they're like
fair.
Like the Celtics are just full of just like shitheads. And I'm like, I hate every one of you. And then the Sixers, I'm like, cool, you guys crumble for the last 6 minutes of every game. I hate every one of you.
Yeah,
James Worthy too.
James Worthy. There we go. A Laker in honor of Javon. It's a solid. It's a solid list, right?
I think I've said this to Javon though, but like you don't get in honor of Javon for being a cross country Lakers fan. Like there's other people you can be like, that guy's born and raised in LA, like in honor of this guy, this Laker. Like Javon just chose the Lakers. So good for him. He got as many rings as he could out of it.
He did. Yeah,
I'm still waiting for one.
Al Horford.
But it's fine. You know, he makes up for it by being an Orioles fan. So it's like, you know.
That is a great point.
It's a give and take.
That's a great point. He does have to suffer with that. Yeah. But they're pretty good this year.
Kyle, you going to watch Game 7? Or are you just expecting
No, it's a loser mentality to not watch it.
Yeah.
To just like chalk it up as like, I'm not even going to, like, I'm going in with very low expectations. Like, I expect them to lose. But to just be like, screw that, I don't care anymore. I'm not even going to give them a shot when they're 48 minutes away from potentially making the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, no, I'll watch.
Declan, have we talked about this? Do you care about the Sixers? You're a Giants fan because you like Eli Manning somehow.
Yeah, and I'm Philly everything else.
Okay.
So yeah, I will be watching, and I probably will be disappointed. But you know what? It's like Kyle said, you can't give up because it's the loser mentality. That's what they want you to think.
You liked Eli Manning before he retired.
I liked Eli Manning before they beat the Patriots the first time. So I was like 3 years old.
But like Eli Manning's likable now. He wasn't likable when he was a player.
He was lovable when he was a player. What are you talking about? I loved Eli Manning.
You remember being 3 years old and saying, you remember being 3 years old and saying, Ma, I'm going to be a big Eli Manning fan.
No,
first ballot, no, but he's a Hall of Famer. I'll give you that.
No, he's a Hall of Famer. I just say first ballot because it gets people mad.
He's a Hall of Famer.
I remember being a Giants fan. But I don't remember like specifically saying Eli. I just remember always loving Eli. Like that was my first football jersey. Like I always was drawn to Eli, but my dad says that was 3 years old was the time I really started getting into it. So, I mean, you know, you live with the consequences. I had to live through Ben McAdoo, but I also got to live through 2 Super Bowls. So that was pretty cool.
When I was 3 years old, my favorite athlete was O.J. Simpson. So also took a drastic change. We also had to suffer.
We went 2 opposite directions. I feel like.
Loved isotoners.
Wait, how old were you?
I was 3 during the OJ chase. It was 92, right? 92?
No, I think it was 94, right?
Oh, so I would have been 5. I thought it was 92.
I thought it was 94.
94, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was 5 years old. So I had 2 good years.
Was it in June? Was it in June of 94?
It was September, I think, right? No, that's the case. The trial was in September. So when did he run away? He got arrested. Yeah, it was during the finals, June 13th. They were out there.
Yes, I believe we were watching it during senior week, because I was a senior in high school in 1994 to age myself. Okay, Declan, I still have to pop out of your head.
I didn't say anything.
It's not a filter, Declan. It's not a filter. It's just how he looks.
And we were shut up. We were watching on TV in a hotel room in Ocean City, Maryland, and we were like,
"Did you have the rabbit ears?" And they're like, "Johnny, get up there, hold the rabbit ears."
No, but I think we were consuming Zima. So yeah, that's what's going on back then.
Oh, yeah. The SNL skit.
What a time.
There's an SNL skit about Zima?
We definitely talked about this. It's essentially an SNL skit about a guy getting his like high school babysitter drunk off Zima so he could take advantage of her.
Oh my
God. It's a terrible skit. They only aired it like once or twice and we can't keep airing this.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
No, we were otherwise having good, clean fun, and then watching that, we're like, wow, this is something else. Anyway, there's no good way to segue out of that. We've covered our 42s. As always, the Scoop is brought to you by Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. If you have been injured while on the road or the highway and the crash was someone else's fault, the insurance company will not be on your side. You need us, Temple Law grads, who will fight hard to get the compensation that you deserve. We only get paid if we win. In Pennsylvania or New York, call us today at 215-261-7359. That's 215-261-7359. And you can find them on the web at greenspans-law.com. That's greenspans-law.com. So as always, we have a lot to get to. A couple of really important basketball recruiting updates, a football recruiting update, a few more mailbag questions have trickled in. Temple now has Georgetown transfer Jordan Riley in the fold, and Howard transfer Steve Settle the third in the fold. Those were two priorities heading into this week for Temple. So Jordan Riley took his official visit to Temple this past weekend, and then Steve Settle took his official visit, started Wednesday night, spent all day on campus Thursday, and he announced his verbal commitment. If you have stayed locked into Owl Scoop and subscribed, you'll continue to get the latest recruiting updates and know when some of this good news is on the way. So our first Steve Settle story is up on the site now. So subscribers will be able to get a more in-depth look at Steve and the longer feature that we're going to have up this weekend. When I talked to Steve this morning, prior to him announcing his verbal commitment, we talked for about a half hour, gave me a ton of good stuff. So I didn't want to leave a lot of that good stuff out. You'll hear from him in a few minutes on the podcast here. You'll see in the story that's up on the site now, some insight into why he picked Temple. So he had some recruiting interest from programs like Penn State, Oklahoma State, VCU when he first hit the portal, and then he ultimately chose between Temple and GW this time around. So, I mean, he's a 6'10", 180-pound forward, had a nice year for Howard. This was a really historical season for them. Their best since 1992, their first NCAA tournament appearance in a long time. And then they, of course, faced Kansas in the first round, got knocked out in the first round. It's a 16 seed, but Kyle, I'll start with you on this. I mean, we'll get to Jordan Riley. I guess we'll work backwards on this. What does this mean for Temple? I mean, obviously, Adam Fisher had a ton of work to do when he took over and has had to farm the transfer portal and get guys that way. Steve Settle was a priority for them. What does it mean to them now that they got him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the interesting or the most important part is it was a guy they identified as a priority and that they were able to close on, which, a couple weeks ago, to be blunt, like they weren't having that much success doing that. In the past couple of weeks, they've gotten a lot better with Barry, Riley, Settle, three guys that they've identified and think that they have a future at Temple that they've now hit on. For Settle himself, I think he kind of hits that role of like, yeah, should he in reality with his current body size be like a 3 or a stretch 4? Sure, but are they going to play him in the 5 as kind of an undersized big and kind of work the offense through him, but also give him the opportunity to kind of shoot threes? Yes. I think he said on the site that he thinks he needs to gain like 10, 15 pounds. He also was 85 pounds when he was a freshman in high school.
Yep.
Oh my God. Like, I think even I was tiny in high school. I think even I was like 100. Well, I was like 105 pounds and I was a freshman. But I think it's a guy that comes in with a proven track record. Like, yes, it's at a lower level, but this isn't a situation where they show somebody they're like, okay, yeah, he didn't have that much success at a lower level, but we like some of his skill sets and we think it can project up here. He's been a day one contributor at Howard. After redshirting, he started every game since then, 66 games. He's averaged 12.5 points. I think he's a guy that if you had to scrimmage tomorrow, he's probably a starter on this team. I don't know what they'll do with those remaining 2 scholarships, if somebody else comes in, or if maybe a guy like Touch Tweet's really gotten a lot better during the offseason. But I think he's a guy you can expect to see play a lot of minutes for Temple.
Yeah, for both of you, I'll throw this question out to you. He's obviously a couple inches taller than him, but is he a guy like maybe a better shooting version? Again, he's got some work to do on his shot, but is this maybe had someone like Nick Jourdain stayed? Is this a guy who's maybe a couple inches taller than Nick Jourdain and a guy in that role that Temple could use? Again, I think he'll be more of like in Adam Fisher's offense, kind of like a pick and pop 5, even though, like you said, he's built like a stretch 4 or like a more of a 3 or a 4. But does that kind of, we'll never know how Adam Fisher would have used Nick Jourdain, but is he that type of player that maybe even a tad better?
Maybe. I mean, we need to see how he plays on this, sort of level, but it's like Kyle said, it's a guy that can stretch the floor, and it's a recruiting win, which is going to be huge. They need that kind of momentum going into the summer, getting guys on the roster. Javon mentioned in last week's episode that they needed big men. And this is, this is a big man to add to the front court, somebody that can maybe go in and get a rebound, but most importantly, can stretch the floor in ways that Jourdain maybe couldn't have. I don't know what he offers defensively compared to Jourdain, who was a hustle guy that could go and that got a lot of blocks, got a lot of stops in crucial parts in games. But he definitely adds something offensively that Jourdain didn't.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. Is offensively, yeah, I think you could say, okay, he's kind of what you hoped Nick Jourdain would be, which is he has the size and he can kind of shoot the threes better clip than Nick Jourdain could. But defensively, like, to give Nick Jourdain his flowers, he was a hell of a shot blocker, which Steve Settle has yet to really show at this level. Like, yeah, he's averaged like 1 a game, so like it's definitely something he can do, but he hasn't gone out and had these like 4, 5, 6 block performances like Nick Jourdain has in the past. So he mentioned guarding the team's best player, which appears to be the in vogue quote about for
Adam Fisher said that too. He said that to Jordan Riley. He said it to Steve.
Said about Jaleel, about Hester Miller. Yeah. So look with that length, maybe he does. Like, if he's agile enough, maybe he does have the ability to kind of lock down some wings if he's quick enough. But I don't think he's all of a sudden going to be a guy that sits with his back to the basket and just swats 3 blocks a game. So that would be the next step, I would say.
Yeah, and again, we've talked about the fact that in Adam Fisher's offense, at least so far, I mean, I think we've gotten the impression that his bigs are going to be, again, if they have the ability to do so, be more of these pick and pop type of guys. Can you be a very good above average screen setter who can roll the elbow, roll to the perimeter and knock down a shot? Yeah, I'm sure, and you'll hear him eventually. I'll have the full interview posted for our subscribers, but sure, he wants to work on every aspect of his game. But here's a guy that they could really use in that pick and pop type of role, whereas a guy like Emmanuel Okpomo, who might still, until he proves himself, might be a little bit more of like a depth guy, but he's not that type of player, but he could be that type of player for Temple, at least to log some minutes there. But the 5 in Adam Fisher's offense is going to look a little different. So, like I said, I talked to him for about a half hour this morning, had a great conversation with him. He gave me a ton of insight into his game, just how he developed growing up. Like Kyle said, I mean, he grew a lot. He grew more than a foot in high school, playing for a really, really loaded DeMatha program there, and really didn't have much of a high-level recruitment. Ends up at Howard, redshirts there, then had 3 really good seasons. He's coming to Temple with 2 years of eligibility left. So this part of our interview here that we're going to play for you is Steve Settle talking about why he connected with Adam Fisher, how Adam Fisher recruited him, and then the specifics of how Adam Fisher showed him he could improve his game.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's genuine. Like, a player can always tell when a coach is not being genuine. And for me, the energy and positivity and happiness he brought to the game, talking about me and especially, my areas of improvement, I think that was the biggest thing for me. Going on visits, everyone likes to show you your highlights and what you do well. I think with Coach Fisher, he didn't really show me. I mean, he showed me a couple things I do well, but for me, just seeing how much I can improve and how drastic slight improvements will, take me, I think was huge for me. So, that was mostly his presentation was areas of improvement, and that's big for me because I know I still have so long to go until I'm at my potential. So.
You're 6'10", but you can shoot the ball. You can do a lot of things. You're very versatile. But what has he told you in terms of where he thinks you can improve and where you can get to as a player?
I think with him, his main thing is just instilling confidence in me. And he knows like a couple tweaks, with my jump shot, in terms of confidence and getting better shots, and just stuff like that to help me become more efficient is going to take my analytics right where they need to be for a person my size. So that was kind of the main thing, is just small tweaks here and there. And he showed me my percentiles and how they would be affected if the tweaks were to take place. And a couple points here and there, a couple free throws here and there, and it just jumped drastically. So I think I had never seen that before analytically. So seeing that for the first time, it just made me want to get to work right away. I ain't gonna lie.
All right, so that's kind of the theme that we're picking up on, and we'll transition here into Jordan Riley, the Georgetown transfer. When coaches are recruiting in the portal, you have to react quickly. Some people are trying to cast a wide net. Some people, depending on their priorities, can zero in on a couple of guys, but it moves so quickly. And Jordan Riley had talked about how, if you look at my stats, they're not going to jump out at you, but I feel like Adam Fisher really sat with me and broke down my game film and talked about why he likes me and then where I could improve. Now, Steve Stettle's stats looked, they look better. They look pretty respectable. Whereas Jordan Riley, he had a good stretch of basketball earlier this year when he was in Georgetown starting lineup for a little while. But that seems to be the theme. And in addition to what Kyle was talking about, hey, you're going to guard the opposing team's best player and stuff like that. It sounds like he's on a little bit of a roll recently, Adam Fisher and his staff, where they're connecting with kids and saying, okay, this is where we can really, really use you. I'm not just going to, as Steve said, show you just your highlights, but we're going to show you where you can get better here. So again, if you look at a guy like Jordan Riley, a guy that averaged a little bit more than 4 points per game in his couple seasons with Georgetown, but now a guy with some length and athleticism, about 6'5", strong guy. You get him for a couple more years, and was a former top 150 recruit, had a pretty impressive recruiting profile. And of course, not a whole lot went right for Georgetown, especially over the last couple of years. I mean, they went 7-25 this season, 2-18 in the Big East. They had that very dubious stretch without a Big East win, but 4.2 points per game in his 2 seasons with Georgetown, and 4.6 points and 2.8 rebounds in 25 games this season. He started 9, and that's when he started to pick up some momentum. But Kyle, again, going back to you on this one, and there's a mailbag question from one of our subscribers where he's asking us for an early forecast on the starting lineup. But what do you make of the Jordan Riley edition? Again, here's a guy who, first time around, not unlike Steve Settle, had a more high profile recruitment this time around. And he was honest when I talked to him. He said, I didn't have high major coaches reaching out to me. And I thought, where am I going to go? But again, here's a guy, if you look at his skill set and the athleticism, where do you think he can fit in with this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can think of a lot of Temple players over the last 15, 20 years that probably fit this mold of athletically, he's an NBA player. Like when it comes to just sheer athleticism, he has NBA athleticism. The issue is he needs to show consistently that he can make deep range shots. And that fits the mold of somebody like Nate Pierre-Louis or Quentin Rose or all these players that have come into Temple with maybe like, okay, that's the thing they need to work upon. I think defensively he's ready day one. I think athletically he's ready day one. It's the shooting. So is there any offense if Adam Fisher is going to let players shoot the three as much as he says? Is there any offense that fits that better of, hey, you need to get better at threes. Here's plenty of live bullets for you to try to attempt threes. I'm not sure. So I think if they all of a sudden you can wave the wand, you can make him a 35% 3-point shooter, then I think he has the potential to be an impact player at the American level. If he doesn't, and then it just ends up being like, okay, no, he's a 20-25% 3-point shooter. It's really not part of his game and really never developed. Then he's probably a little limited in the sense that he'll be a D and drive guy instead of 3 and D, where he can slash, he can kind of get to the rim, which they're also going to need. They're not just going to go out there and shoot 63s a game. They are going to need to score in transition, play fast, make points off defense. I think he's a good piece. I think he's a guy that recruiting wise had a big recruitment. It's like Quante Berry, like big recruitments, big offers. Didn't work out for whatever reason. I mean, Georgetown you might as well throw all that stuff to the side because that was just such a cluster of a situation for the last couple of years down there. Like there's a reason that there has been a coaching change down there. So hopefully it's a better situation up here. And yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the ones that might catch more attention down the line because he really has the potential to kind of play above what he's done so far 2 years in the Big East.
If you look at this stretch earlier in the season from about January 4th to January 16th, so he started to get going, scored in double figures in 3 of those 4 games. He had 12 against Villanova at home. Now he went 4 of 10, 0 of 3, 0 of 3 from 3, and then started to pick up more confidence. 5 of 9 from the floor against Marquette in 31 minutes, 4 of 9 from the floor against Seton Hall in 32 minutes. And then he added, arguably his best game of the year, which I believe was his career high at Villanova, 18 points in 30 minutes, 8 of 12 from the floor, 2 of 3 from 3. And then the following game, about 5 days later against Xavier, again, he goes 2 of 3 from 3, only 9 points, but a guy that showed some flashes. And again, I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about how Temple right now, from an NIL perspective, is not going to be getting the cream of the crop guys out of the portal who are getting upwards of $500,000 in NIL money. So they're not going to be getting that. But I agree with you. I think he's an important piece in terms of what he could be defensively. Another guy who was told by Adam Fisher, you're going to be guarding the best player on the floor. I mean, Declan, when you called several games this year, and you've been writing for us for OwlScoop, but you called several Temple games this year, and you were there. You saw the team a lot. When you started seeing guys leaving the portal, I mean, if you were Adam Fisher, I mean, what off the top of your head, what were you thinking are their top needs? Do you think they've started to slowly but surely check them off the list now?
I think they addressed a lot of the issues with scorers. I think there's no question that Davion Dunn and Caleb Battle were their 2 biggest scorers, and it was hard to get anybody else going when those 2 guys weren't going, which happened quite a bit at times where either one was firing on all cylinders or both of them were kind of struggling and trying to facilitate. I think they have gone out and done that with guys like Quante Berry, guys like Jordan Riley, but they've struggled with replacing Jameel Reynolds, who was a big time post scorer when he was utilized that way. They went out and addressed the backcourt and went out and got, some guards that can play. My only issue with that is, they haven't, with Quante and with Jordan Riley, they have kind of the same concern where either they haven't shot that many threes or they've said themselves, like Quante Berry last week on the Scoop said that, he needs to work on his 3-point shooting and he needs to be more aggressive from beyond the arc. That might be a concern, especially with how Fisher likes to play and likes to get those threes up. But they need to get out somebody that can score in the post, somebody that can get rebounds, which they struggled with as well, kind of ending possessions on the defensive end and then getting second chances on the offensive end. So I don't think they've addressed that quite yet, but I do think they have some guys now that can go out and get you a bucket when you need it. And they have some good defense in the backcourt, which is important, but they need at least one guy that can go out and, be in the paint, get rebounds, that kind of thing. So until then, it might be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, and we'll have to see again. I don't think we talked earlier in the podcast here about how Adam Fisher might use his post players much differently than your traditional back to the basket guy. Again, I don't think if they ever had the chance to get a guy like Jameel Reynolds again, I don't think it by any means that they'll be like, nah, we're not interested. And again, like kudos to Aaron McKee and the former staff for finding him and doing their due diligence. And when they listened to Johnny Dawkins and saying, hey, if you can get him in shape, he could be really good for you. And we've talked, of course, several times about how a lot of these guys have transferred on to some pretty prominent programs. I don't know. Well, again, with the 2 scholarships they have left, we have some insight on that, about how they might use those last 2 spots. So again, if you're an OwlScoop.com subscriber, you'll get some updated information on that. We'll see how they use their bigs. I think when you talk about the post play, I think it might be less about the scoring and more about, do you have, like Kyle said earlier, do you have good rim protectors? Again, Steve Settle might be, maybe he might end up being a more polished offensive player, but let's not forget what Nick Jourdain did to help them win, their biggest game of the year. Just what he was in the post there. And yeah, sometimes he struggled with his identity. Do I want to step out and shoot threes? do I want to try to post up a little bit more? But yeah, we'll see what they do with those last 2 scholarships. Again, you'll get some insight into that if you are an OwlScoop subscriber. I have a couple clips here from my conversation with Jordan Riley. This first one that we're going to play. Again, one of the things that I was kind of struck by, it stuck out to me when we talked, was how he said, yeah, you're not going to be overly impressed with my stats. But Adam Fisher was the guy during my recruitment who really, he said, I thought more coaches would look more at the game film and not just with stats, but he kind of got the impression that guys were it was being very transactional. Oh, let's look at his numbers. If we don't like the stats, we're going to move on. So here's Jordan Riley talking about why he thinks his game film should outweigh his stats and why that was an important part of his recruitment to Temple.
When you hit the portal, is there kind of this feeling like, oh, here we go again? Does it feel weird going through the recruitment the second time around?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be worse than the first time, but it really wasn't, because not that much coaches recruited me during the second time around, and I'm like, it's a relief. But at the same time, it's like, where am I going to go? And one thing that really, like, had me confused was, like, the coaches looked like they didn't look at, like, the game film. They looked at, like, the stats. So they was just going off the stats and basically how I play like this, and instead of watching the game film. So I was like, if you're not going to watch the game film, what makes you think the stats is going to, determine how I play? Like, if you watch the game film, then you probably get more of understanding of my situation. But most of the coaches didn't do that, and I know Adam Fisher, he looked at my game film instead of the stats to see pretty much how I played and what went wrong with my season. And that's one thing that I liked about him, too, that made me like, oh, this dude here, he knows what he's doing.
The second clip that we're going to play for you here, again, gives you some insight. Again, we can talk, like we were talking about a few minutes ago, how might Adam Fisher use his bigs? What are they going to do? What's their play style going to be? So as we've been covering recruiting, as we've been covering some of these guys who have either gotten offers from Temple or committed to Temple, we've asked them, hey, what does the staff talk to you about in terms of how they want to play? And this is Jordan Riley talking about how Adam Fisher wants to play and how he wants to use him next season.
Pretty much fast. He wants everybody to get in shape, so that's pretty much what I'm doing right now. Since I've been focusing on schoolwork for the past 3 weeks, I haven't really gotten to the gym, but now I'm back to it. Mm-hmm. And I think he said shoot a lot of threes and attack the hoop, get to the free throw line, and pretty much play great defense. Since he has me and Jalil and I said, he says pretty much all three of us going to be fighting to guard the best player. I have guys that got to play defense like me, so, I feel like that leads to a lot in playing, the game. And when he was showing me clips, he was showing me how defense leads the offense. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty much how I want to play. And that's pretty much how I play.
All right, so again, if you haven't subscribed, now's a good time. Got some more updated staff news for you. I mean, one that was announced earlier on Friday and something that we have been prepping fans for, that Kyle's been on top of. Andrew Ortelli's new video coordinator. He came over from Kentucky, so there's another role there. Kyle also broke some other staff news that you might want to know about. So again, if you're an OwlScoop.com subscriber, you can get that on our basketball message board. If you're not subscribing, you're missing out. And as I mentioned before, there's a little bit of insight there from us in terms of how they might use those last 2 available scholarships, with Steve Settle verbally committing on Friday. Earlier today, they're at 11 scholarship players now. So moving over to football, some additional recruiting news there since we last talked to you. Temple got a verbal commitment from East Tennessee State University defensive lineman Davion Hood. He was a 2022 Southern Conference all-freshman team pick. So, Temple could be getting an ascending player here. Kyle, I should know this. If you're an FCS player and then you transfer up, is he locked into, let's say, and again, we're really, really projecting on this, Davion Hood comes in, gets 8 sacks. Does he would have to sit if he wanted to transfer again, even if it was from FCS to FBS this time around?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, prior to transfer portal craziness, it was if you wanted to go from FCS to FBS, you had to get a waiver or sit out a year. It was if you went to go down, you didn't have to sit out.
Yeah,
so with that logic still in mind, he'll use his waiver to play right away in 2023. And then, he would have to either grad transfer or get something else. But you are putting the
certainly. Absolutely. Absolutely.
If he becomes arguably the best defensive lineman of all time.
Right. No, I'm talking more about how, again, if you're getting a transfer, are you either when you get a guy as a transfer, one of the benefits is that you'll have them for longer if you want them for longer. So it looks like here they at least they would humbly think that they got an ascending player. Of course, we have to see what Davion Hood does when he gets to Temple. But
I think he's a guy who I don't know if he ends up with his hand in the dirt or if he's more of a Leighton Jordan where he's going to play like outside linebacker and just kind of pass rush. I mean, he's only 230 or so, probably put on a little bit of weight, but he could just be an outside linebacker. And if that's the case, you might not see him right away because look, they have guys like Leighton Jordan and Trey Thomas is healthy again, and Florida transfer Davion Black's out there. But like Leighton Jordan, this is his last year of eligibility. It's building depth, seeing where these guys come. For all I know, he might come in and get 9 sacks right away. I mean, he did start as a redshirt freshman, granted at the FCS level, but I think he's more of a down the line guy.
Mm-hmm. So if you're an Owl Scoop subscriber, you'll have the chance to read Ramir Vaughn's story on one of the better wideouts in the DMV from the 2025 class. That's Emmanuel Dyson, who also played at DeMatha, where Steve Settle played. And we'll have more football recruiting.
And who else played?
DeMatha? Well, a ton of players.
Chester Stewart.
Oh, yes. Number 7. Declan was probably in grade school when Chester Stewart was Temple's quarterback?
Yeah.
2008, 9-ish.
Well, he was a Temple's quarterback for some years he shouldn't have been. I think he played in like 2007 as a true freshman against Penn State, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then he was in that game that they won on the road against
9-9 against Maryland.
Yeah. Yeah. Very efficient. Had a touchdown pass to Evan Rodriguez, right?
Yeah. On that wheel route they kept running.
Yeah. Yep. And Adazio was
a lot of times I forget my kids' names. Like I'll call Jordan Haley, but I remember Chester Stewart's stat line from 2010.
So yeah, Ramir caught up with Emmanuel Dyson. Again, he's a player from the 2025 class, but got an offer from Temple. Some cool insight there as to how Temple's built a connection with them there. And like I said, we're going to have a lot more football recruiting content for you on the way. Jump over to the mailbag here. And again, we had a few more questions trickle in not long before we started recording. We are not recruiting, just to be clear. Recruiting maybe some new interns for next year, but
I was going to say, I think we're always recruiting.
Yeah.
You look like Sinead O'Connor in that music video now. You're just a floating head with like
nothing compares to you.
Yeah.
I was thinking that like 10 minutes ago. I was like, this is kind of.
So I look like crap and Declan looks like Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah. Well, he looks like Sinead O'Connor in this scenario, not like physically, just like because he has the black backdrop.
Declan, do you know who wrote Nothing Compares to You?
Is this a joke? I mean, obviously it's Prince. Like, what do we?
Okay. All right. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. All right.
I love that song.
Okay. There we go. All right. You never know.
Just don't burn a photo of the Pope.
Yeah.
Nope. Wouldn't dream of it.
Wouldn't do that.
Not on SNL.
No. How about Declan hitting
some
3
deep
for 3 here? Yeah.
I love that song. Like,
love
not
Sinead
even
O'Connor.
kidding. Love that song.
All right. It's locked in this week.
It's in the running to be the new Al Scoop alma mater song.
I don't know. I kind of like the original one. I've already been working on my renditions of it.
Javon will hate you if you sing that song.
All right. So the first question here is from one of our subscribers. The screen name is OwlI89. Question here: based on what you've seen so far with how the roster is shaping up, has Temple's recruiting taken a leap forward? It feels like it used to be easier to assess recruiting when a player was coming out of high school as a 3 or 4-star player, but with the portal, it's tougher to track. Appreciate your thoughts. So yeah, we got a couple of recruiting related questions here. That's an interesting question. Obviously, small sample size, but what do you guys think here? With maybe even just using, and again, they've had their hits, they've had their misses. You know, they tried getting Will Johnston from UT Rio Grande Valley, didn't get him. They didn't get Dylan Adewusu out of St. John's, ended up going to Seton Hall. I mean, a lot of times, one of the main reasons has been NIL. So they've lost out on some guys. They obviously this week they picked up 2 guys. Kyle, I'll start with you. What do you think on this? Do you feel like their recruitment is taking a leap forward, or at least a step in the right direction?
Yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. I think a staff's true recruiting prowess, even with how obviously important the transfer portal and NIL is nowadays, I think like a true recruiting prowess is kind of based still on like high school kids, where it's like, okay, if with this class of 2024, if you convince this kid to go to Temple instead of Nova or Maryland or even like a Seton Hall, then that's a little more impressive to me than sometimes some of the transfer portal stuff. Because with transfer portal, there's so many different reasons why players choose teams. I want to go closer to home. This team's offering me the most money. I was at a higher level and now I need to get film, so I'm going to go down like a lower level. It's not really comparing like everything on the same playing field. High school, a lot of that's still kind of the same. Like you're like just out recruiting kids. Yeah, is there NIL for high school kids? Absolutely. But like I think it's more you can kind of see how good of recruiters they are with that. I think they're heading in the right direction. I feel better about their recruiting now than I did 3 weeks ago, for sure. I mean, when they missed out on Will Johnston, they missed out on Adewusu. That wasn't a good look necessarily for them. Like they shot their shot and they came up short with those, unfortunately. But since then, like yeah, they've gotten 3 straight guys that they honed in on. So I don't know if it's also hard to compare a first-year staff that's been together for 5 weeks to a 4-year staff that had been together for 4 years, like it was a couple months ago. So I don't think it'd be fair to necessarily compare them to the end of Aaron McKee's era.
Declan, any thoughts?
Yeah, just, kind of reiterating what Kyle said. It's a step in the right direction, I think. And it's tough too, because when you're recruiting somebody out of high school, you have no idea what they're going to look like at the college level and how much of it is going to be development, and how much of it they're going to be able to adapt to. And on the other hand, when you're looking at somebody that played college ball, you kind of know, what they look like against adults rather than just in their own kind of high school league. And you don't know more how they handle like just outside of basketball, like college itself, and how they have their routines and like just, minuscule daily things that athletes have to deal with. So I think it's very different in that aspect too. But yeah, I think the big thing is, this team has been together for, a month or so now, compared to Aaron and his staff had 4 years, like Kyle said. So it's very like we've only seen a small snapshot of what the recruiting might look like. And obviously recruiting is going to be easier if they have success this season too. So it's a step in the right direction, but it's too soon to tell, I think.
So we'll jump to this next one. It's a little bit down the list, but to kind of keep things cohesive here, to follow up on recruiting, the next one comes from the screen name TU-Owl08. His question is, how good will this staff be with a decent NIL war chest? I like what I'm seeing so far with the staff doing more with less. So, yeah, I think they could. I mean, look, a lot of staffs could be good with a decent NIL war chest. I mean, you see guys going to schools who are like, okay, that's this guy ended up there because there was money. And again, to be clear, I'm not bemoaning these kids' choices. If you have a chance to make some life-changing money or something close to it, life-changing compared to where you are at this point in your life in college, good for them. I would think Temple's staff could be pretty dangerous with a decent NIL war chest because, again, like Declan said, like Kyle said, small sample size, but in the recruits that we've talked to so far, some common themes, a lot of energy, a lot of attention to detail as to how they can make me better. They do some of the things that we haven't seen in a while. They're fun and engaging on social media. Of course, we haven't seen Adam Fisher's sideline persona yet, but one of the criticisms of Aaron, good, bad, or indifferent, and again, I don't really question his knowledge of the game, was he too old school? Is he too hard on these guys? Does he not have a lot of fun? Should he be more engaging on social media? Should be doing this? Should be doing that? If these guys, and again, I think that they approach talking about NIL the right way. And I talked to Bobby Jordan a few weeks ago when I talked about recruiting in general. His answer was not, yeah, it's a lot different now. I don't like it. It's just, I'm more of an old school guy. He just said, no, you got to adapt. It is what it is, which is the right thing to say. So I think that they have the right identity and the right outlook, and they know that they need to adapt. And if they don't want to adapt, then they're in the wrong line of work. So I think, yeah, with more NIL resources, sure. I think they could be very good. You guys are just nodding in agreement. Thumbs up.
You did it.
That was a great answer. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Short and sweet one here. This is from Twitter, from Blair Aylward is the name. Do they need to do walk-on tryouts for any last spots? No.
Well, I mean, they need them for walk-on spots, right?
For walk-ons,
but no,
if
you're asking like, oh, because like the go-to like Twitter joke a month ago was like, oh, will Temple even be able to put like field a team? And like, yeah, they will. And like, yes. But that being said, yeah, I'm sure like Ryan Cyrus is gone. I'm sure there's a walk-on.
Another one from Twitter. This one, from Andrew Forgotch on Twitter. I know there are still additions coming, but with the portal additions to this point, how does this lineup compare to last year? And the early answer, you don't, at least on the surface right now, you don't have that guy like Davion Hood, who's going to be capable of getting you 30 or 32 or really like going off on a night where no one else is doing that. And good, bad, or indifferent, you don't have a guy like Caleb Battle who's going to be able to, get streaky like that. Beyond that, I don't know. It's a lot of remains to be seen.
Just to set expectations, like this is going to be year one of the Adam Fisher era, right? Like to compare him to again year 4, completing a complete recruiting cycle of Aaron McKee is unfair. It's I guess encouraging that they got people that maybe fit the mold of Caleb Battle, where like look, Quante Berry, Jordan Riley, their early careers are exactly like Caleb Battle's. They went to the Big East, they showed some flashes. They transferred down, and then Caleb Battle kind of became that 20-point a game guy once he got here. But like we don't know yet. I just think if you're going to go into next season right now and be like, well, if they don't make the tournament, then it's a failure, then like you're setting yourself up for unreasonable expectations. I think the good thing is these recent recruiting wins make it more reasonable that, okay, maybe they're flirting with 500 or they're a little above 500 or they're the 6th, 7th, 8th, 5th best team in the conference, as opposed to like they went 5-25 and you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, I think they can win some, they can be competitive with this roster right now.
But a guy like we haven't talked about him on this pod yet, and I would imagine he'll come off the bench, is Matteo Piccarelli from UMBC, who can really shoot the heck out of the ball. And yes, you wanted that out of a guy like Zach Hicks, who was starting, but they really struggled with that. Obviously, but we're not breaking any news when they say when we say that they went through a lot of scoring stretches and scoring slumps. You would have hoped that maybe a guy like Shane Dezzoni could have been something like that off the bench, and maybe he will be this year. We'll see. But Piccarelli, a guy that could come off and get 4 or 5 threes off the bench for you. They have an option like that. We'll see how it goes, but that's maybe a difference that you don't have. But like Kyle said, if you're going, and I get where the comparison comes from, if you're going year 4 to year 1 from 2 different coaching staffs, like we said, I think you're setting yourself up for a little bit of disappointment there. Joe Becca, one of our subscribers, longtime Owl Scoop subscribers, his question is very early starting 5 projections. Declan, because of the confused look on your face, I'm going to put you on the spot.
I think it's too early to tell, right?
It is, but answer the question anyway.
Oh, geez.
Don't shy away from it.
Okay. I mean, look, you brought back Kysir Miller for a reason, right? Feels like he's going to be the starting point guard, I think. Past that, like, I don't know. Like, it's way too early to tell. You gotta see if they get another big man out of the portal that can go in and rebound. If so, because that 5 position, if it even happens, like we said in the podcast, like it might not look like the traditional lineup that Temple has had of recent. But you need somebody that can at least go in and try and get rebounds, right? So maybe that is Steve Settle. Maybe that's somebody else that they go get. But I just think it's wide open. It's wide open. And I'm going to defer to Kyle, who knows more about this team than I do. But I just think there's nobody that's set in stone, obviously starter material in my mind.
Did you hear Kyle say, there you go? His face is beaming.
I'll say,
because
I know
paid
how
him
to
a compliment.
I will say, look, I like people that like me. I'll say Fabe, Ja, but probably Ja more like a 4 than like a 2 or a 3. Settles are the ones that I'm like, okay, I'm pretty confident that you guys would start if they played tomorrow. The other ones I think it's 2 of the following 3 people: Quante Berry, Jordan Riley, Shane Dezzoni. My only reason for not just immediately putting Jordan Riley in the lineup is like I think there would be some concerns there with him and Ja both being in the same starting lineup if you want to shoot that many threes. Because look, for all we know, maybe Riley is closer to what he was during that good stretch where he was, a 35, 37% shooter than he was the rest of the season when he wasn't a good 3-point shooter. If that's the case, then like you can start him. But like if he's still like a work in progress with stuff like that, I think he might be more of a guy off the bench initially, and that's where Shane Dezzoni comes in. But I'll say that. So I'll give you 6. It's Fabe, Shane Zazzoni, Barry, Jordan Riley, Josh Settles, but one of those guys will obviously come off the bench. I think Picarelli's an off the bench guy initially.
Yeah, I would confidently say Heiser Miller, Jaleel White. I would say Jordan Riley, Steve Settle. It's that 5th. And again, they will, I'm sure, if we get Adam Fisher on this podcast eventually, which I'm sure we will, and then leading up to the preseason, I think, Fisher and his staff are going to say, hey, we want the 5 best guys on the court that can pass, dribble, shoot, defend. So again, I think we're long past the days of two guards, 2 forwards, and a center. That 5th guy, again, I agree with Kyle, could be Dazzoni. It could be, are we discounting, does Temple really have Taj Tweet listed at 6'9" now?
They did, and that concerned me too. They had him and Emmanuel Akpoma at the same height, right? And I was like,
maybe Taj Tweet has hit a growth spurt that I'm not aware of.
He's like 6'7".
I think Taj is closer to 6'7". Maybe he starts because he's an energy guy, and maybe he's a defensive presence. If not, yeah, you see how maybe a guy like Quante Berry takes off after a redshirting at Providence. So I think that 5th spot, again, we're talking about this in mid-May, is the one that I'm not quite sure on, but I don't think it would be Emmanuel Akpoma. I agree with Kyle. I don't think it would be Matteo Picarelli. Don't think it would be, I don't know. I'm just looking at the roster here. Zion Stanford coming in as a true freshman. Probably not. But again, he's got some size and length. We'll see there. So to close things out here, Pat Egan I reached out to Pat this morning, asked him if he wanted to submit a mailbag question. Again, he's been a long time Al Scoop subscriber and a long time supporter of our podcast, and asked him if he wanted to submit a mailbag question. He usually just texts them in. And he said, I'm going away from sports. I'm broken. I'd love to know what the graduates are doing. So he's broken and he's upset because of the Sixers. So I say, I'd love to know what the graduates are doing. I mean, Javon and Caden, that's about it. I wish them well. They will be missed. I still need a full Zoom of all the vets. I hate sports. I'm in a dark place. Lots of soul searching going on right now, looking inward. So, Pat, we can tell you that Javon and Caden are on the job hunt, close to some exciting opportunities. I don't want to break any job news for them just yet, but they're going to be just fine. We love them both very much. Very, very talented people. And then with that, to close things out, as we are talking about 97.5, The Fanatic, and again, they've always been great in having some of our staff members on their shows in the past. Want to wish John Kincaid the best of luck. John, if you follow him on social media, announced this morning that he was recently diagnosed with colon cancer. And John, if you follow John in his career, he's beaten cancer twice. And I have all the confidence in the world that he's going to beat it a 3rd time. Just my heart breaks for him because he's a really good human being, really loves Temple. Declan, I want to tip this over to you because John, it's been his goal, one of his goals ever since coming back from Atlanta and doing sports talk radio in Atlanta, coming home. Of course, he was excited about his full-time job at the Fanatic, but very early on, he reached out to David Boardman, Klein College's dean, and he reached out to me and said, I'd love to teach at Temple. And it took a little bit of time to get it together, the right class, right fit. But John is so impeccably prepared. And I was flattered by how many times he reached out to me and said, hey, what do you think of the syllabus? What should I be doing? What could I be doing? And he's just tactically prepared. And he took the time. Declan remembers this. He came to campus even before he started teaching just to meet with some students. What are you looking for? I want to give you an idea of what I want to do, but what do you guys want to learn from me? And we would just wish him the best of luck. He said he's going to be back in a few weeks. He's got a surgery coming up, but just want to let him know we love him and we're thinking of him and we know he's going to be okay. But Declan, you took his class. What can you tell people about John Kincaid? A lot of people know him from his work on the radio, but you took his class this spring. What's he like?
I love John. I told him the first night I met him. Well, actually, I met him before even he came to campus in the fall. I met him the spring before when he was taking his daughter on a tour of 1300, the residence hall, which is where I lived. And I was giving him a tour and took a picture with him. It was surreal because I used to listen to the big podcast with Shaq when I told him I was much younger than I should have been listening to it. And he's just an unbelievable personality, and more than how knowledgeable he is and how great of a personality he is, he just genuinely cared about every single person in the class. And took time to listen to whatever 2-minute sample we threw at him. I mean, I talked about everything from, some thoughts that I had, and talking about my personal life on air to talking about my dating life with Ramir, and submitting an assignment on that. He was always so willing.
And
He's
we'll play
always so
that.
willing to.
Will we be playing that next week, Declan?
If you'd like to, I can find the clip.
Dating
It's a
life.
very good clip. It's
Yeah.
He loved that. He loved that. But
Okay.
he's just, for those of you who haven't met him, you could have any sort of conversation with him and he is going to care, and he's going to remember, months down the line, if you ever see him again. Like, I love John with my entire heart, and I know that he's going to beat cancer again because he just keeps doing it. He's a heck of a fighter. He'll tell you that he learned it from his mom, who was also a heck of a fighter. John he's the best, and thoughts and prayers to him, obviously, but I know he's going to be good, and because he always finds a way.
He is. We're looking forward to hearing him back on the radio in a few weeks. So I want to thank all of you for joining us for another episode. Next week, we're going to have Fran Duffy from the Philadelphia Eagles, who, again, he's the host and producer of a couple of really cool podcasts there. One of them being the Journey to the Draft podcast. And Fran, if you know a little bit about his career in the Temple football program, he got his start at Temple as Temple's football video coordinator under Al Golden, and was part of a staff that was just we came to know eventually that it was just full of superstars, whether it was Orion Day and Matt Rule, so on and so forth. And one of the early on guys on that staff was Sean Desai in a grad extern role, or a grad assistant role, who's now the Eagles defensive coordinator. So we're going to be talking to Fran about his story, as we try to do it before the draft, but we wanted to wait until after all of the assistant coaches were announced. So we're going to be talking to Fran about just the various Temple connections with the Eagles, talking to him about Hassan Reddick and just how he evaluates players, how he's learned to understand and talk about the game at a super high level. So we're really looking forward to that. And again, we'll, of course, keep you updated on all the latest recruiting information as well. So again, thank you all for joining us for another week, and we will talk to you next week.